Go find your water heater. It is probably standing in the basement, or in a closet, or out in the garage. A big, boring steel cylinder you never think about at all, right up until the morning you walk down and step in a puddle. Most of them last only about 8 to 12 years, and when they finally go, they do not warn you. They just rust through and flood the floor. But here is what almost nobody will ever tell you. Inside that tank, there is a single part, about the size of a broomstick, that costs almost nothing, and it alone decides whether your water heater rusts out at year 8 or quietly runs past 20. Tonight I am going to show you that part, how it works, and why the people who sold you the tank have so little reason to mention it. Let me slow down and explain the problem the tank is actually fighting, because once you understand it, everything else makes sense. Your water heater is a steel tank, and inside it, all day and all night, is hot water. Steel and hot water are enemies. Left alone, the steel would rust from the inside in just a few years and spring a leak. The makers know this, so they line the inside of the tank with a thin coat of glass, a glass lining, to keep the water off the steel. But that glass coating is thin, and it always has tiny flaws, little gaps and chips and spots the coating missed. And at every one of those bare spots, the hot water goes to work on the exposed steel. So the glass lining alone was never going to be enough. The engineers needed a second line of defense. That second line of defense is the part I want you to know about. It is called the sacrificial anode rod. It is a long metal rod, usually magnesium or aluminum, that screws into the top of the tank and hangs down inside the water. And it works on a beautifully simple piece of science. When you put two different metals in water, one of them corrodes faster than the other. The engineers chose a rod made of a metal that is more reactive than the steel of the tank, which means the water attacks the rod first and leaves the steel alone. The rod literally sacrifices itself, corroding away year after year, so that your tank does not. That is why it is called sacrificial. It is a bodyguard, taking the hits that were meant for the steel. Now you can see the whole life and death of a water heater. As long as that rod has metal left on it, the tank is protected and it barely ages. The rod slowly dissolves, doing its job in the dark, and nobody ever looks at it. Then one day the rod is finally used up, completely gone. Just a bare wire hanging in the water. And from that moment, the clock on your tank starts running fast. With the bodyguard gone, the hot water turns on the exposed steel, the tank begins to rust from the inside out, and within a year or two it eats a pinhole through the wall. That pinhole is the puddle on your floor. That is the end. Not because the tank was cheap, but because its one protector was allowed to die and no one replaced it. If you have ever felt like these machines are designed to quietly fail on a schedule, then subscribe to Still Running, because finding the one small part that decides the whole machine's life is exactly what we do here. Now let me tell you the numbers, because they are the part that will genuinely change how you think about that tank in the basement. A typical tank water heater is expected to last somewhere around 8 to 12 years. But here is the hinge that almost no homeowner is told. That anode rod, the bodyguard, usually only lasts about 3 to 5 years before it is used up. Do you see the trap in those two numbers? The rod dies years before the tank is designed to, which means for the back half of your water heater's life, it has been running with no protection at all, slowly rusting toward that pinhole. And on the other side of it, when people do replace the rod on schedule, every 3 to 5 years, plumbers will tell you those tanks can run well past 20 years. Same tank. The only difference is whether one cheap rod was ever swapped out. Here is the rehook, the thing to carry with you. Your water heater is not really a sealed appliance you cannot maintain. It is a steel tank with a serviceable bodyguard inside it, and that bodyguard is a wear item, exactly like the oil in an engine or the brakes on a truck. Nobody expects engine oil to last the life of the car. But somehow almost no one is ever told that the anode rod is the same kind of thing, a part that must be checked and replaced, or the machine it protects will die early and take your basement carpet with it. And the anode rod is not even the only quiet killer working inside that tank. Down at the very bottom, minerals from your water settle out and build up into a thick layer of sediment, especially if your water is hard. On a gas heater, that sediment sits right above the burner and acts like a blanket, so the flame has to overheat the steel to push its heat up through it, and that extra heat cracks the glass lining and stresses the tank. On an electric heater, the sediment can bury the lower heating element and burn it out. This is exactly why the old-timers always drained a few gallons off the bottom of the tank once a year, to flush that grit out. Almost nobody does it anymore, and so a second slow failure runs quietly alongside the first. So why does no one tell you? I am not going to hand you a conspiracy. Because the honest answer is simpler and, in its own way, worse. The rod is cheap, but the knowledge is not common, and the incentives all point the wrong way. A water heater that dies right around the end of its warranty is not a scandal to the people who sell them. It is a sale. A tank that quietly runs for 25 years because a careful owner kept swapping a $20 rod is a tank they did not get to sell you 3 times. Nobody has to plot anything. They just have to not mention the rod and let the rod do what an unwatched rod always does, which is disappear. And there is a tell hidden in the warranty itself, once you know to look for it. Water heaters are often sold in different warranty lengths, a 6-year model and a 9 or 12-year model that costs more. Here is the open secret in the trade. In many cases, the tank is nearly the same steel. The longer warranty model simply comes with a bigger anode rod, or even 2 of them, so it is protected longer straight from the factory. You are quite literally paying extra for more bodyguard, which means you could buy the cheaper tank, add or replace the rod yourself for a few dollars, and get the very same long life for a fraction of the price. The warranty number was never really a promise about the steel. It was a quiet statement about the rod. So what do you actually do with this? Because this is one of the rare ones where a little knowledge saves you real money and a flooded floor. First, find out how old your water heater is. There is usually a date in the serial number on the label. If it is more than a few years old and that rod has never been touched, it has very likely already dissolved. Second, the rod can be checked. It threads out of the top of the tank with the right wrench, and you or a plumber can look at it. If it is a thin wire, it is done, and a new one costs very little. And one thing worth knowing when you do replace it. The standard rod is magnesium, which protects best, but if you have a water softener, that softened water eats a magnesium rod fast, sometimes in just a couple of years. So many plumbers switch to an aluminum rod or a powered rod that never wears out at all. If your hot water ever starts to smell like rotten eggs, that is often the rod reacting with the water, and changing the type of rod usually clears it right up. Third, from now on, treat that rod as regular maintenance, on a schedule, every few years, the same way you would change a filter. That single habit is the difference between a heater that dies at 8 and one that runs past 20. And while you have the wrench out, open the drain valve at the bottom and run a few gallons off to flush the sediment, then do that once a year going forward. It takes 15 minutes and a garden hose. Between checking the rod every few years and flushing the tank once a year, you have taken a machine that most people replace around year 10 and given it a very real shot at running past 20, for the price of a cheap rod and a little of your own time. I am not here to scare you about your basement, and I am not telling you the tank is junk. I am telling you the opposite. That plain steel cylinder is far more durable than its short life suggests, and it was quietly built with a serviceable part that can double or triple how long it lasts. The tragedy is not the engineering. The engineering is clever. The tragedy is that the one thing you needed to know to keep it alive is the one thing nobody bothered to tell you. Now you know it. And think about how rare that really is. Most of what shortens the life of a modern appliance is sealed away where you cannot reach it, decided in a factory you will never set foot in. This one is different. This one is a single bolt on the top of the tank, a wrench, and 20 minutes, and it sits entirely in your own hands. You do not have to accept the 8-year clock on your water heater. You can reach up and reset it yourself, and that is about the most control you will ever be handed over how long a major appliance in your home actually survives. If you want more of these machines opened up and explained, the small parts that decide everything, then subscribe to Still Running. Then go look at the top of that water heater, find the hex head of the anode rod, and understand that you are looking at the single bolt that decides whether that tank sees 8 years or 20.